Welcome to the PowerView Gen 2 Hub training session. Today I'll be covering the benefits and features of the Gen 2 Hub and also doing a demonstration on how to set up the PowerView Gen 2 Hub and how to integrate it or connect it to Google Home. So to start off, what I'd like to do is cover what's actually going to be included in the box. Okay, so this is the PowerView Gen 2 Hub box. And what we've got included inside the box, of course, is the new Gen 2 Hub. Okay, so as you can see, aesthetically it looks completely different from the Gen 1 Hub. It's white compared to the previous Gen 1, which was black. It's round compared to the Gen 1 Hub that was quite squared off. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but it's actually taken the shape of PowerView Pebble remote controls. So what Hunter Douglas has done is they've put everything into sync in terms of the shape and design, and they've made the Gen 2 Hub look more like a PowerView Pebble remote control. What's also included inside the box, of course, is an Ethernet cable and a power cord. Now, the power cord is white compared to the previous one that was black, so we've had a few requests to have the accessories white, and now they are. And the power cord as well is about twice the length of the previous power cord that we had with the Gen 1 Hub. So you've got twice the length now. What's also included in the box is a repeater, just like the Gen 1, and we're actually still including the Gen 1 repeaters. So inside the box, you've got your repeater, you've got your power supply, and you've also got the two Australian adapters that clip on, one for the repeater and one for the PowerView Hub. So in terms of content, nothing really changes compared to the Gen 1 Hub, apart from the fact that you're getting a Gen 2 PowerView Hub. Right. Now, 19th of November will be the dealer launch date for the PowerView Gen 2 Hub. So what that means is from the 19th of November, any dealers that have the PowerView stand, the red stand in their showroom, they will automatically receive the new PowerView Gen 2 launch pack. So what's included in here? Of course, the PowerView Gen 2 Hub, and underneath it will be two double-sided stickers, so you can peel it off and stick it onto your red stand. And you've also got 3 of the new Pebble colors that are neutral colors. Now, if you don't have one of the red PowerView stands in your showroom, you can contact Debbie Foster, and she can arrange that for you, and she can also arrange one of these PowerView Gen 2 kits for you. But if you've already got the stand, you will automatically receive this. Now, one thing just to mention, I'm sure you've already noticed, is that we're actually providing you with the Gen 1 PowerView repeater as opposed to the Gen 2 repeater. And the reason behind this is we're actually waiting on the certification, the Australian certification and standards to be approved for the PowerView Gen 2 repeater. So up until that's been approved, we're continuing to roll with the PowerView Gen 1 repeaters, and they are compatible with the Gen 2 Hub. But once the certification has been approved, then we'll move over to the Gen 2 repeater. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly run through the benefits and the features of the Gen 2 Hub and probably do a bit of comparison on certain topics between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 Hub. So first point is the aesthetics, and as you can see, and I've already covered this, aesthetically the device looks completely different from the Gen 1 Hub, and I guess Hunter Douglas have moved towards making the shape more like the PowerView Pebble, and they've gone with a nice white color. Another great feature of the Gen 2 Hub is the fact that it can actually be configured as a Wi-Fi device. So what that means is previously with the Gen 1 Hub, it had to be connected to a Wi-Fi router via an Ethernet cable. With the Gen 2 Hub, initially to set it up, you must have it connected, but it can be configured later on down the track to be set up as a Wi-Fi device. So it can be more of a central location. And we'll cover a bit later on the importance of that and why that's so important to have a feature like that. The other advantage of the Gen 2 Hub is you can actually have an additional or a secondary hub. Now, at the moment, with the Gen 1 Hub, you can only have one hub connected to a PowerView network, and you can have a maximum of 6 repeaters. So whether it's a Gen 1 or the Gen 2 hub, you can have a maximum of 6 repeaters. The advantage of the Gen 2 hub is you can actually add a secondary hub, and what that means is you can add an additional 6 repeaters. So in total, you can have 12 repeaters throughout the house versus a Gen 1 hub, which is only 6 repeaters. Now, where that comes in handy is if you've got quite a large house, that's a 2-story or 3-story house, or if you've got a house that's made out of solid concrete or brick, you might be in a position where 6 repeaters may not be enough to send a signal across the whole house, whether it's, like I said, whether it's got to do with the construction of the house or just the design of the house and it's so big. So the Gen 2 hub will actually allow you to spread that signal a lot more evenly across the house. With the Gen 2 hub as well, you can also do what's called a data migration. So if you've got a customer that's got a Gen 1 hub and they decide to purchase a Gen 2 hub, they don't have to set up the Gen 2 hub from scratch. If they follow the prompts, and initially when you set it up, it'll ask you, do you want to set up as a new device, or if it knows that it's connected to a Wi-Fi router that has a Gen 1 hub, it'll actually ask you, would you like to migrate the data across? Now, I don't think this is something that's going to be very common, but where I think consumers will want to upgrade from the Gen 1 hub to the Gen 2 hub is if they're using Google or Amazon, and if they're currently using it, they need to use what's called IFT, which is a third-party service that acts as the middleman to connect it all together. Gen 2 hub talks natively to Google and Amazon. So I think if you've got a customer that's quite tech savvy and they're not happy with performance of the Gen 1 hub with Google and Amazon, I think that's where you'll get a customer that will move over to the Gen 2. And yeah, it's really easy to do. And the advantage here is you don't have to set up the Gen 2 hub from scratch in terms of copying network ID, scanning for the shades again, creating rooms, scenes, and all that. It would automatically copy all that information across for the consumer. One of the key features, and I've just spoke about this in the previous point briefly, is the fact that the Gen 2 hub communicates direct with Google Home or Amazon Echo. And this is a massive thing, especially for a lot of the consumers that are tech savvy. Like I previously said, with the Gen 1 hub, you need to use that third-party service called IFT. And I guess the downside of IFT is the lag time. So there could be a lag time of up to, a minute to 2 minutes. The other thing was some people found it a bit difficult to navigate and set it up through IFT, and just the whole process of having to create a third account as we're now. They've already got their Amazon or Google account set up and the device working. They just create the PowerView account, register the hub, and then with a couple of steps, you just link it all together. So it's a lot more easier. And in terms of a response time, it's almost instant. Within a couple of seconds, the shade will respond to whatever command you give to Google or the Amazon device. Something I didn't mention a little bit earlier on was on the 19th of November, not only are we launching the PowerView Gen 2 hub, but we're also launching Silhouette Low Light Gap. So Silhouette Low Light Gap has, I guess, 2 key features that stand out. The first feature is the low light gap. So it's got a low light gap and it's got an even light gap on both ends of the shade. And the second feature is it uses what's called a single chip motor. So this is a new motor that Hunter Douglas are moving across to, and over a period of time, all the soft shades will progress and move over to the single chip, and Silhouette is the first one, the first soft shade to move over to the single chip motor. And pretty much the single chip motors work hand in hand with the PowerView Gen 2 hubs. And I'll talk about that later on, but there is an advantage when you've got a Gen 2 hub and a single chip motor. They work hand in hand together. Integrating into third-party automation systems. So Hunter Douglas have a wide range of drivers that they've created where they've worked with third-party automation systems like RTI, Crestron, Control4, just to name a few. And they've specifically created drivers, which means it's a lot easier for the integrator, the person that's setting up the home automation system, to actually connect PowerView to that home automation system. Another feature as well that the Gen 2 hub has is it actually displays the RF, or the signal strength of the shade. And again, I'll talk about this later on. This probably has more an advantage to the installer because they can see whether the signal strength from the hub to the shade, how strong or how weak it is. And it's a clear indication whether they need to place a repeater in, especially if they're getting a bit of an intermediate response. All right, so in terms of home automation, as previously mentioned, one of the key advantages and key features of the PowerView Gen 2 hub is that it communicates direct with Google or Amazon, especially when compared to the Gen 1 hub where you needed that third-party service. And we will do a demo at the end, and I will show you guys how easy it is to actually connect them and link them both up together again. If you do have a customer that is using IFT because they've got other devices in the house or other services in the house that aren't directly supported by Amazon or Google, they can still use IFT with PowerView. There's not a problem with that, but yeah, I think moving forward, a lot of things will start communicating direct with Google or Amazon, just like the Gen2 hub. So I think that definitely is a key feature. We spoke about the PowerView Gen2 hub can connect to third-party automation systems through drivers that Hunter Douglas have created for specific automation systems and companies. If there isn't a driver available for that specific home automation system, the PowerView Gen2 hub still can communicate with that third-party automation system, but it does it via a method called over IP. And this is a method that a lot of home automation systems are moving towards now, and this is where technology is going, where things are becoming wireless now. Everyone's trying to get rid of wires. Everyone's trying to make things easy to set up. And Hunter Douglas is also moving down that path as well. So if there aren't drivers available for that home automation system, we still can support that home automation system. We just use over IP. And if you contact us, we can provide you the details and the documentation on that. One thing to keep in mind is the Gen 1 hub supported what's called an RS-232 serial cable. The Gen 2 hub doesn't do that. And like I said, the reason is Hunter Douglas are moving more towards the wireless path, the wireless direction, like a lot of the home automation systems. So they've taken that out. We still can use a connection interface for certain soft shade products. Just keep in mind, when Silhouette low light gap motor gets launched, the interface will not be compatible with that. And also it's not compatible with modern Roman shades. But all the rest of the soft shades are still compatible with the connection interface. Okay, we spoke about at the start with benefits and features that one of the key features of the Gen 2 hub is the fact that it can be configured as a Wi-Fi device versus the Gen 1 hub. So what I want to do is I just want to quickly cover, I guess, the pros of going Wi-Fi versus Ethernet. So the advantage of going Wi-Fi is the fact that it doesn't have to physically be connected to the Wi-Fi router of the home. It can be placed anywhere in the house. Now, where that becomes an advantage is if you've got, say, for example, even a single-story house, and you've got the study at the front of the house, all the way at the front of the house, and that's where the Wi-Fi router is. And say, for example, it's a 3-4 bedroom house, you've got a kitchen, you've got a living area, and you've got shades throughout the whole house, all the way to the very end of the house. If you're connected via Ethernet, the PowerView hub will sit right at the front of the house, on one end of the house, in that study or in that office, plugged into the Wi-Fi router. Now, to send the PowerView signal all the way to the other end of the house, you're going to have to put maybe, say, 3, 4, maybe even 5 repeaters throughout the house to extend the PowerView signal all the way to the very end. Now, if you configured the Gen 2 hub to a Wi-Fi setup, what you could do then is you could take that Gen 2 hub, place it in the middle of the house. You're going to spread the signal a lot more evenly across the house, which means you're going to need less repeaters. You may only need 1 repeater on one side and 1 repeater on the other end. So say, for example, instead of needing 4 or 5 repeaters, you may only need 2 repeaters. So you're going to reduce the amount of repeaters and you're going to spread the signal strength evenly across the house, which probably makes it easier to set up. When it comes to setting up the Gen 2 hub, probably the most important thing to keep in mind is, even though it can be set up as a Wi-Fi device or configured as a Wi-Fi device, initially to set it up, it needs to be plugged in to the Wi-Fi router via the Ethernet cable, just like you would with the Gen 1 hub. And the reason behind this is, initially you need to connect it via Ethernet because it needs to perform a firmware update. You can't set it up via Wi-Fi at the start because once it connects to the app, it'll know that the firmware is out of date and you're not going to progress anymore. So you need to physically plug it into the Ethernet cable initially to set it up. Once you've set it up and the firmware update has been completed, then you can configure it to Wi-Fi, take it to wherever you want in the house, plug it in via the power cable, and then you can start discovering your shades and all that. But just keep in mind, it is very important that you are aware that initially to set it up, you must plug it in via Ethernet. Another thing to keep in mind as well is when you configure it to Wi-Fi, the Gen 2 hub can only communicate to Wi-Fi networks that are on a 2.4 gigahertz network. And I'm not sure if you know, but at the moment, you've got 2 types of networks for Wi-Fi. You've got the traditional 2.4 gigahertz, and you've got what's called a 5 gigahertz. So up until a couple of years ago, all the Wi-Fi modems in the homes would only operate on 2.4 gigahertz. Within, say, maybe the last 3 years, majority of modems now are called a dual band, and what that means is they operate on both frequencies, a 2.4 gigahertz and a 5 gigahertz. They each have their pros and cons, but yeah, majority of modems now are what's called a dual band, so they operate on both. The PowerView Gen 2 hub can only communicate on a 2.4 gigahertz frequency. It's really not a restriction because it doesn't mean you need to change any of your other devices from home if they are on a 5 gigahertz frequency back to the 2.4. Everything can still stay on the 5 gigahertz frequency, including your phone, your tablet that you're using. But what it means is when you go to configure the device, it will only pick up the 2.4 gigahertz network in the house and not the 5. So just keep that in mind. Okay. We spoke about if you've got a customer that's got a Gen 1 hub and they decide to purchase a Gen 2 hub, and chances are they're going to do that because they've got a Google or Amazon device in the house and they want that direct communication and no lag time. In terms of doing that data migration, like I said, it's really, really easy. There's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. To do the data migration, the Gen 2 hub must be plugged into the same Wi-Fi router that the Gen 1 hub is plugged into. And the second thing is, chances are you're going to need to do what's called a firmware upgrade on the Gen 1 hub. If the firmware is quite out of date on the Gen 1 hub, they're not going to communicate with each other and you're going to get a message saying firmware on Gen 1 hub is out of date. In a nutshell, you need to update. So what I suggest you do is, before you even connect the Gen 2 hub, take the power cable out of the Gen 1 hub, disconnect it from the hub, leave it disconnected for 30 to 60 seconds, then plug it back in. The hub will reboot and it should automatically download the latest firmware. Once that's done and the hub's connected back to the network, then plug the Gen 2 hub into the same Wi-Fi router as the Gen 1 hub, follow the prompts, and it'll actually tell you, would you like to migrate data from Gen 1 hub to Gen 2? You follow the prompts and it will do the whole thing for you. Then it'll actually ask you to disconnect the Gen 1 hub and you're ready to rock and roll. But just keep in mind, disconnect the power first from the Gen 1 hub, reconnect it, perform a firmware update, and you must have the Gen 2 hub plugged into the same Wi-Fi router as the Gen 1.